Everyman Jack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Them Niggas. I'm excited today and honored today to have Kristin Juel here with us of Juel Concepts. I connected with Kristin doing research for Water and Music this past fall, which was super enriching for me, super informative. And I absolutely loved working with you, Kristin. I think it helped me to understand the Web3 music landscape way more than I would have being in any other environment. And I think your leadership on the project definitely helped us get the project done, and definitely facilitated me learning about the space through meeting people in a really meaningful way. So I'm very appreciative of you doing that, leading that project, and you taking time today to be on the podcast as well.
Absolutely. It was and has always been my pleasure.
I got that. I guess where I would really love to start is hearing about, can you introduce yourself, tell my audience a little bit about your background?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So Kristin Juel, I founded Juel Concepts, which is my management company 10 years ago in 2013, after leaving a 25-year career in advertising and brand strategy, and also innovation and technology. And we got to touch some music elements as well. I got to touch some music elements as well over the years, with some labels and also some projects within some of the brands I've worked on. In 2013, when I decided to start Juel Concepts, it was to focus on helping to guide artists to know their worth. Because the musicians that I did work with over those 25 years, I knew we had bigger budgets than what they were asking for. You know what I mean? And there were just things that I thought, oh, maybe they could use some help, frankly. And then some of them had asked me before, and I thought, I'm not really ready to manage humans like that, because it's very different to manage a team than it is to manage an artist. And so it wasn't until I was later, more skilled, had my tenure done, things that I had wanted to do, where I was like, I now know I need to do this job. Like, I want to help people. So yeah, it's been 10 years of management. And also, as you mentioned, a couple of years ago, I think when the world paused, I started a podcast and a web series called Uncut Jewels, which then led me to realize there's a lot of really interesting other people out there, right? Like, not just my artists doing things, and I wanted to help them too. And so the research became a way for me to expand my mind and also learn something that I could try and help guide for the future with my artists, knowing that everything was just so uncertain. So yeah, it was like a big exploration, I think, for us all.
I got that. And what was I guess coming into this space, coming into artist management, what was that transition like for you? Starting to take on artists. Who were the first artists that you worked with, just when you started doing freelance?
Yeah. So, interestingly, I was pursued by an artist, a band initially that was an Australian band. And then, through working with them, I sort of realized, I do need to love what I'm doing. Right. And it has to be a big passion point. So really the first artist that I got behind, truly behind, was a band called Intergalactics, an Australian band. That's a 2-person band. We did an EP together, and then they introduced me to, one of their talents was a bassist who also worked with Hamish Anderson, who's an artist that I work with now still. And so we brought him in 2014 for brand strategy, and then evolved into management with him as well. And then there was Ruby Vell and the Sulphonics. So Hamish Anderson is out of Australia. Ruby Vell and the Sulphonics are out of Atlanta. And I actually have been a fan of Ruby's since 2010. I started buying her 45, I don't know if you know what 7 inches look like, those little 7 inches. So I spin DJ, I do soul sessions and, kind of like hip hop stuff. So at one point when I was at Fat Beats, buying records, if you can believe it, they were like, oh, you need to listen to this girl out of Atlanta, Ruby Vell and the Sulphonics. And so I bought it. And I was obsessed. And then in 2012, she released her debut album, and I bought it for everybody. And at that time, I was friends with Gary Clark Jr. and his band. And I said to him, I was like, yo, like, she's amazing. She should totally open up for you. And he's like, oh, girl, she opened up for me in Atlanta. And then his drummer was like, I used to be her drummer. I can introduce you to her. And that's actually how we got together. Cause like the drummer, Johnny Rattleat, shout out, was like, you love her so much, you should manage her. Cause she was looking for management. And so, yeah, we started working together. And then, I took her solo so that she could do some sync work, and she crushed it, like completely crushed it. And then we worked to regain her masters back from that debut album, which had been taken by a label. So it's been, a good, well, I guess it's almost 10 years. It's 9 years we've been, 23. Actually, next year will be 10 years that we've been working together. And it's really been, I think, for both Ruby and I, a big learning on what it means to regain your voice, to regain your truth, And then there's been others. I work with Justy out of New York right now, Staten Island, Brooklyn. She is a queer and lesbian person of color, does amazing, amazing, amazing work around that conversation on TikTok, on all of her platforms. She's a part of the Studio Space, which is a brand that I'm also advising. She's been building her room there, her studio space. That's a real conversation going beyond the music, because she's chill hop, right? So she's saying amazing things. She's got like a flow, kind of like a Jay-Z vibe, like really like Anderson .Paak, like very talented. In fact, I met her on Clubhouse because I was looking to manage someone who sounded like that Anderson .Paak Free Nationals, Ari Lennox kind of vibe, and she fit the bill. So I was really psyched. And her conversation around mental health, especially in the Black and queer world, I'm so grateful she wants to do that. She's young, and it is not easy to hold that conversation. So for the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been supporting her in all of those initiatives. I think she's done some great things. Like we got her submitted for a grant from Live Nation and Citibank. So she got a beautiful $10,000 grant last year. And she's been part of their emerging LGBTQ series for the last year. So that's been great. Men's Warehouse came to the table and did a really nice activation when she did Brooklyn. She did Pride last year in New York, and so they outfitted her with the suit, custom suit. It's been great for her. I've been watching her rise, and I'm a big fan. So Justy out of New York, chill hop, and then we've worked with other artists like Shelly Peiken, who's wrote Bitch, What a Girl Wants, Almost Doesn't Count. We released her album. We've released work for Jessica Childress, who's done incredible things and has really taken over a sync and co-producing capacity as well. She's doing great things. So I'm very excited to have touched so many artists. The Main Squeeze. I mean, over the last decade, we've had just like tremendous talent come in and work with us. And I'm, for me, it's like a journey in and of itself to guide people on that, the process, because this is an ever-changing landscape. I mean, 10 years ago, it was completely different than today with how you put out music, really. And so, things have come, that are more in the innovation and technology space that doesn't necessarily relate to my artists right now, but we know there's things to consider for the future. So that's why even, like my work isn't just management. My work is futurist, right? Like understanding where things could be going to try and help them meet that at some point. But the most important thing that they need to do is be authentic and real and who they are. And sometimes that means you don't get the attention that you think you deserve right away. But eventually, that pendulum always swings with music. And, like 5 years ago, the electric guitar was completely dead. And they were like, is anybody going to do it? And now, like the pandemic, everybody got an electric guitar and learned how to play guitar or bake bread. So I don't believe in hype cycles. And I just want everyone to do what they feel is theirs to hold.
I got that. And I guess something that really stood out to me hearing you talk about the artists that you've worked with is, and something that you really value is like the authentic expression component. And I'm really curious to hear, like, how do you work with someone to help them cultivate that authentic voice as they're kind of like building their brand, but also building their identity, and like voice as an artist? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I have because of my background in brand and strategy, I have a very, very rigorous process for this. And it's probably unlike what most people do. Unless you're in social media, I would imagine you should be doing this because it's really going to help you get to some of the nuances of the conversation. But, obviously I have a long-term career, like work with some of these artists. So it's a lot easier when you know someone. But when you're onboarding a new artist, for me to understand where you're at, we do deep dives, just like you would any brand. You spend the time and you understand who they are. So I have questionnaires that are like designed to not just understand their music piece, but who they are as a person. Because when you're trying to, like, Justy's a great example, Ruby's a great example, like they're both activists, they're both interested in having a bigger conversation, and their music reflects that. That's a really important piece to them. So when it comes to thinking about their brand, it's very, very different than I would with like a Hamish Anderson, who's like really trying to educate and remind people where Black music came from, right? He's in the blues space, blues rock, and everything comes from blues, basically, gospel, Black music, all of that. So he's extremely knowledgeable about that world, but he's not necessarily an activist. He's just an educator, right? So it's like there are nuances in how you approach positioning and messaging through those things. I think when you do a deep dive like that, if someone tells you they're interested in gardening, or someone else is like, I really like to work out, like, you're not going to be like, hey, let's do a playlist. You know what I mean? Like you use those things to sort of like bring elements of who they are into the conversation. Ironically, as you think about some of this stuff, I do believe there should be a sense of mystery about some things. Like not everything needs to be out there for everyone to know. So I let artists decide what is their sort of boundary. I do prefer to hold things so that we can also, as you release music, use those conversations as a way to build the strategy to when you release, right? So it's not just like every day, here's who I am. It's here's who I am. And sometimes it's strategically underscoring some of the release strategies we have. For instance, like a song might have something specific that it's addressing, and you can now go back and be like, oh, you mentioned that you were interested in this. How does this relate to that? Can we integrate these other work, or things you're interested in this new conversation about this song, for instance, or the video? So we start with that, and then we spend time together and try to understand it. I listen to everything and guide them through the A&R process. I did forget to mention the Gold Souls out of Sacramento. Sorry, that's another band I work with. And, they're a great example of, they'll hand me like an 8-minute song, and I'm like, this needs to be cut down. Like sometimes artists, just need to remember, yes, it could be an 8-minute song, but is that going to really help you? Like, does it make sense? How does it serve the song? What are you doing for the song, right? That starts to feel like more of a production piece. So I do get involved in like the A&R, what songs are going out when, because everything matters, because I'm also the one helping to release it. We don't have labels. We are all about independence, right? So we have distribution companies. Sometimes they can come to the table more than others. But yeah, you have to, we do all the digital marketing. We do everything that we can to help these guys. So I can't just, put something out. Like, you need time. And I always tell them, prepare between, so a brand, in my experience, to have a consumer connect with the brand, it takes like 22 to 27 different touches that they hear the word, right? Once you hear that word so many times, you start to have familiarity with it. That's how you get brand familiarness, right? Like familiarity. And affinity comes from liking those experiences that you had at those 22 to 27 times. This is all very basic, right? So what you don't want to do is like be inauthentic and then like miss opportunities to guide them and why they should be paying attention to you. And while they're doing that, they're making decisions if they want to stay with you, right? So I'm always very cognizant of, what message they put out and where. Right? TikTok is going to have a different sound bite than something like Twitter, or, a newsletter, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different ways, and those are all touches. So you also need content. And I will be the first person to say I'm not a fan, and I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that a viral TikTok moment is going to give you the career you want long term. And I think I've always felt this way, that like these are episodic experiences, not necessarily designed to like put seats in a theater, right? Like it's a moment. And frankly, it's like sometimes under a minute, right? So it's like, how do you know that you're going to want to spend 2 hours with an artist in a theater? You know, so, and that's what you want to be able to build to, a 90-minute set where you're headlining. That's a very long period of time, kind of in disconnect with what I see on TikTok. But that's just what I see. Again, looking at the future, I feel like the most important thing you could do is continue to do your live show performance and engage people while you're there, and just make them feel like they want to come back. Like this is something they want to see over and over again. So I'm more interested in things like radio, which I believe is a really, really great engagement strategy. I'm really interested in, I like playlisting because I think building relationships with playlisters is interesting. But, you know, like I said, some artists are really interested in TikTok, and I'm not going to stop them from doing it. Justy has, you know, crushed it on TikTok, but I don't, you know, I'd like for her to be able to translate that to something very specific in market. And that's how I think. So all of those touches lead to the ability to get them to do a behavior you eventually want them to do. Like, you know, listen to your song, buy your song, pre-order your song, watch your video, go to your show, buy a ticket, buy a t-shirt, you know, this is a very transactional relationship. I want it to be where it's really engaged and people are talking to each other, which is why I like Web3. So, but yeah, there's lots there.
No, there is so much there, and I hear a lot of people, and I think like the direct engagement, like the move away from parasocial relationships with fans, and like just a simple transactional distance, I think is a lot of what excites me as well. But I actually wanted to ask you to speak to like what you enjoy about the play, like building relationships with playlisters. I feel like I hear a lot of people talk about the value of building your TikTok presence and like generating those moments, but I feel like I hear way more seldomly artists, especially in hip hop, talking about the value of trying to get on playlists and connecting with playlisters. So what has that been like for you, kind of having to navigate that for your artists?
Yeah, well, so I don't really deal with hip hop. I deal with chill hop, which is like neo soul, if you will. So most of the stuff, like it's soul, blues, rock and roll, but and pop, you know, kind of pop rock and stuff like that. But I, you know, I think that what you have to remember is you're building relationships with people in this industry, and playlisters don't go away because they're making their list, like they're making playlists. So, and that's what they want to be doing. I think there are some tools, you know, like I you know, watch Justy's on Submit Hub, and she uses it very, very aggressively, which I think is great, like underscoring the importance of the community she's building there. I like to also engage Pandora and Apple Music and those people in advance, just to let them know what's going on. I feel like when you build a rapport with them and when you use those tools, like I'm a big fan of Pandora. I think, you know, Pandora is like one of the things that no one really, I don't know, for whatever reason, they don't talk about it, but all the tools are free and that audience is huge. Plus they're now connected with SiriusXM. So I know that at some point that's going to cross over. So I just feel like, you know, it's going to take time, but there's got to be some, you know, it's like you give interest in their job and you get back. And I just love the people that we work with at those places. I also feel like there are some who are and have been instrumental in getting our artists on just their own individual playlists on Submit Hub or off of it. And, you know, I mean, there's they can really make a difference, you know, because they touch so many people. And some of them are even more influential than you could imagine. You know, just being on a playlist can give you, they get awareness, right? Like I remember, for instance, when we released something with Intergalactics back in the day, you know, I got an email from Interscope, and they had been checking out what we were doing on Submit Hub. You know, I mean, that's pretty remarkable to think that, like, it was a while ago, but these A&R people are looking to see what's going on there. So yeah, whether you want to become, you know, a label person or not, it doesn't even matter. It's just they're looking. So it's good. And I do believe, like I said about radio, you know, people talk about how expensive it is. It is the ultimate engagement strategy. If you can get someone to play your record on the radio, and I know everyone's like, oh, who listens to the radio? A lot of people. a lot of people still. It's like, Spotify or the DSPs are like a third of discovery. YouTube is like at the top of the chain for music discovery a lot. And then there's the radio, and it's like, what are you going to do? Like, it's there. And if you can get them to play it, then they get behind you. And when you go on tour, you can be like, hey, I'm doing a tour in your market. Would you like to come? Or give them tickets to give away. That's engagement strategy. So yeah, it's a little old fashioned, I think, in today's world, because, it's not as much of a sexy thing as like a Spotify digital. But if you think about it, on the back end, even though radio doesn't pay you to be, like, in fact, sometimes you have to help grease the wheel on some things, which we don't do, but like a lot of artists I know are responsible, or labels are responsible for helping to get that sort of grease of the wheel going. The net is you have a wider presence, right? Because more and more people are listening. And if you get a drive time, and then there's a Shazam, you can start to identify where your audience is. And that's another reason why I believe in sync, because, again, coming from advertising, like, I've seen firsthand what it feels like to, see an artist's life change from a sync, and the validation is those Shazams that come in after you get a really great sync.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And
But
I
yeah,
guess
playlisters are really, I think they're good. They're working really hard,
No, I got that, and I get that you're also working very hard, and I think it's super dope to hear the way that you approach stuff. And I'm interested to hear if like your approach to marketing and thinking about fan engagement was shifted at all, like kind of leading the research project that we were working on, and if so, like how so?
Approach to fan journey.
Approach to like engaging one's audience, and like you were saying, like the direct engagement is so important, especially if you're trying to get 27, 22 experiences with the fan, where they're start to
Yeah.
think about the relationship to you, and like do they identify with you, do they like those experiences. Have you reconsidered or thought of new ways to approach doing that with artists that you work with based on like this new digital engagement you're seeing artists experiment with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love watching the NVAK Collective team do their releases in the Web3 space. I think they've just nailed it. Like, how you give before you get, you give before you ask. And you're creating these like breadcrumbs, if you will, the tokenizing of the communities, like all of these things. I mean, it excites me to no end to see Annika Rose rise, because she started talking before she started singing about the environment and the world she's in Web3, and the team that's behind her and what they're building. And then she started performing, and you're like, oh my God, this woman was signed at like, I don't know, 9 or something, or 13. And like,
I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah, she's worked with like, I'm forgetting the name of the guy who did the voice, I think, or the X Factor, X something. He's the famous one, Simon Cowell. Like, I think she was a part of like stuff like that. And when I first heard her, I was like, why is she doing this? And then I heard her voice, and I was like, I get it. She's like pop rock. It inspired me to think, like, what could I do with my artists? So, I think, there are, the idea of building the community is an important one. Ruby's done a really great job. Jesse's done a really great job. We've got, people on Team Hamish posting without us having to do it now, which is great. It's like you see the evolution of people excited about their future. But when I see the world in Web3, I know we still have work to do, because, none of my artists have released anything on chain. However, I did for Uncut Jewels, for that podcast I was telling you about.
Yeah.
I did mint something so that I could understand what it means, because Uncut Jewels was designed during the pandemic. It was designed to be an environment where we could talk, it was supposed to be a membership based thing. So you had to like join like the experience. And then it was only for these people to go and partner together and support music. And then because of the pandemic, I opened it up to everybody, and we did the web series live, and then we put it out as a podcast. But when I look back on that, the press release that we put out about that, the only word that was missing that would have gotten it to a Web3 experience would have been on chain, blockchain, right? Something like that. Everything else was designed the same way, where it's like you come in, you get nominated to be a part of something. You know what I mean? It's like artist to artist. It was like a peers experience. And had I thought to put something out on chain, or had I been able to know that we could have minted some of these, I mean, we still can go back and do it. And that's why I started the first mint I did for Uncut Jewels to show my artists what it felt like, and to show me what it felt like to do this. Cause you really do need to go through it yourself. I minted 10. I only gave myself 24 hours, and it's supposed to unlock other things, and it will mean something someday. So this is where I'm like, we're doing these pieces. I'm doing what I can with the art, like that piece of art behind me is mine. I've done art that's mine. So I'm putting that on chain. My artists have songs. Eventually they're going to want to do that. We tried to do a POAP, but like, it just, it's like, you got to really work into those experiences. When Ruby released or re-released that debut album I was telling you about that we got the masters back for.
Yeah.
In the communication that we put out with the pre-order campaign to all of her fans, I did ask, do any of you have a wallet, right? Like a Web3 wallet, let me know. And out of the, I think it was like 4,000, like one had a wallet that replied, right? So it's like, it's not there yet for a lot of the fans. But I think and then, that's what we learned in the Web3 fan journey article too, right? It's like, it's not quite there yet. The people we were talking to, if you remember, they were like, I had no idea what to expect. You have to literally be onboarded to get a wallet by an artist. Like that means the artist has to really know how to answer these questions. That is not something you can just easily do if you're not in the space. So like while I'm in the space, my artists have not gotten there yet. Although I think Justy's probably the closest in Ruby to considering doing this. I just feel like I can't guide them. I can't tell them. I'm not going to tell them to do it if there isn't an audience there for it. But when there is, we're going to be ready. And that's the way I'm looking at it. We now know what we need to do, and we have to work through it and figure it out. But yeah, I'm probably the most inspired of everybody about this. But yeah, every once in a while you meet someone who actually is doing something in the space that's great. And you're like, oh, good. This might be something my artists can understand better if they see someone else doing it. Right.
Oh, absolutely. And I think like your point around, like we said, 1 for 4,000, I think that is like an insane number. I mean, I think like the space is so new and so many people are like, I think public sentiment around crypto is so thwarted, as I guess the word I'll use. Like it's not good. And I think the media coverage really doesn't make a good case for Web3, honestly. And I think that's a big part of why I'm interested in kind of doing this podcast. To talk to people like yourself that I think are trying to understand this space, how it pertains to not just creatives, but the public interest. You see things like decentralized public goods, people trying to innovate in that space in the world of nonprofit action. A lot of that stuff is really exciting to me. But I think I remember doing the Web3 fan journey research and hearing people talk about like, oh yeah, like I got into Web3 and then I discovered music NFTs, but hearing artists and collectors also talk about like new people coming into the space, it was so much about like how do we create content to help them understand how to set up a wallet, how to do all of these things. And I feel like it's so easy. I guess if you're saying like 22 to 27 touch points, I think it's so easy to mess up one of those trying to help someone understand crypto. It's like, why would you even like go that route? Honestly, it's like, why would I want crypto in my brand?
Nose because you're right on the money.
And I think it's so fair, but I think it's also kind of what excites me about like building this platform is like talking to different people and also trying to ease, I guess, create an ease of access where it's like more palatable because you're learning from people that you're hearing talk about the journey into space, but so much more. And I think I haven't really thought so much like how do I structure content. I'm thinking in the long term it'll be more about like creating short form clips from these different episodes and then structuring those to be like outtakes that are specific concepts and things people can look at on like TikTok and Instagram.
And that's what I did. So like with the Uncut Jewels, every single episode, like when we did the Latasha one, it's like we basically took us like laughing because we laughed like the whole time. And it's just like, what just happened, so you will do that. And that's why when I started with the Mint, I thought I'm going to do Uncut Jewels because it's the one thing, like I even got like uncutjewels.xyz. I believe in this. I think this is going to work and it's going to take time. But I've already done, 26 episodes and I'm like one by one, they're going to go on the chain, like at some point. But it's expensive to do. You got to figure out how you're going to do it. Who's going to come. I don't want to just do it while I'm talking to myself. I want to do it where there's like people involved and people understand what it means. And I do want to do the second series, the second round, because I feel like now I know more, right? It's like now it's like it's going to feel different for me. It will be a bit more drilled down of a conversation. However, I'm not sure that it has to own, like, I think, for me, it's like Web3, the metaverse, the idea of what an NFT can do. I know it's a bad word, but like the idea of having some kind of a collectible that then reveals something to your fans later or over time or often is like mind blowing. And I've seen it happen firsthand with the NVAK Collective people where they, I was like one of 25 people who got her first NFT. I think it was minted on Bruises, and I'm fairly confident it had like an imagery that was eventually going to be in her bedroom too. It's like we built up to something. But because I was one of 25 people, I was put on a list for a show at the Peppermint Club here in Los Angeles that I didn't have to pay for go. And I just showed up and there we were. And then like they sent me a t-shirt at Christmas time too. It's like these turn into real life experiences.
Yeah.
It's not just digital. But I also do think that the metaverse is a great place for people who don't necessarily want to go to the Peppermint Club, right? But you want to meet up. It's like there are so many, and she's creating an environment that's like a video game of her room where she writes her stuff, like it's literally her bedroom. And that video, that game that she's creating, this like environment that they've created, is now a place where people can connect and explore more with her. So it's that detail that I feel like you're bringing people in. It's a safe place. We all know the world's really tough. A lot of people, it's like the metaverse is, I don't remember if you remember that research that we did, but it was the culminating thought was it's not like Kurt Cobain said, where it's just like come as you are. It's literally come as you want to be. Like who you want to be in the metaverse can exist. And I feel like that's a big place for a lot of audiences that, have a slight neurodivergence to them that really don't want to be, some of them are just really introverted. They want to stay inside instead of going outside. I was an extrovert until the pandemic. I've learned the art of introversion and I love it. I had no idea how restorative it could be for your soul. So, of course I'll go on these like environments and watch and listen and maybe watch Coachella from remote now. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting more open to the idea that I don't, I love live music. I've always loved the live experience. I'm never going to not want to go in person, but there are some times where I'm like, I can't make it. And this is a good substitution for that. And I really do believe it can get better. It's probably 20 years away still, but it's going to be something that I think future generations will benefit tremendously from existing today and keep the iterative learning going so it can get better and better in the next few, decades. And I also feel like, from that research in the metaverse, I really, and I saw it in Web3, the mindset of what people are about, I think has to be truly considered when you're designing something. And, I shout out to Natalie Crew, who is always championing, and Lindsay too, always championing people to have like openness about how people come to the table and what they're about and their truth. And I think that, we've talked about, authentic nature of who you are is important to consider when you're designing these things, and have that be a North Star, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Shout out to Natalie. Natalie's on our core team for season 1 content, which I'm really excited to see. Season 1 of community driven content for We Them Niggas, which I'm very excited about. I guess hearing you talk about your podcast, I'd love to hear like what was the theme of your podcast? What are you focused on? Like, what are you trying to build with your podcast? And as you think about like going on chain, like what are the things you're trying to do before you get there?
Well, I'll be straight up. Like Uncut Jewels came out of a day where suddenly, during the pandemic, you started to see people just not know where content was going. And we were getting a lot of press hits, but they weren't translating to anything. And that happens sometimes, right? Like you get like, oh, this is a good look. This is a good look. But you're the one that's responsible for pushing them to that content because you're the artist. You got the thing. So I decided I'm going to start this series during the pandemic just to talk and keep artists together, right? Like to create an environment. Originally, like I said, it was supposed to be this nomination process where artists nominated other artists and frankly, fans. Because I really wanted fans to be nominated and fans to nominate other fans. So it's like this idea of like bringing people in and this, the sort of, I when I worked at TiVo, we saw, firsthand, look at what my TV can do, right? And then all of a sudden advocacy happens. Oh, I want that TiVo. Oh, I want that. And you all get a $50 referral, and it's like exciting. I kind of wanted to do that for music. And so that's where it was sort of born. And then it became, the digital marketer in me was like, if instead of paying at this time, instead of paying a lot of money for, press, I'll host these sessions with the artists, let them talk about the, how they're feeling, what's going on, but also the music, how they got to the place where they created the music. I brought the producers, the directors on, engineers, photography, people who designed the cover art, illustrators, you name it. We had the artists come and bring their partners to talk about the process. The video directors were great because we could like share the video and talk about how we did it. And, some of it was like done like, 5 or 6 months before. So it was really fun just to get together during the pandemic and have a reason to be together. And then it just evolved into anybody who was releasing something. We started going, like originally it was for my artists and then artist friends. And then it was like, we had Sam Morrow on, we had Latasha on, we had Chris Pierce on, we had T Nava on from the Free Nationals. I don't know if you know who they are, but
That's super dope. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really fun. And we had fun, and it was every Tuesday night, and we just like hung out and talked, and like, it was very chill. And so it, wasn't really initially designed to be a podcast. You can probably tell some of the audio pieces were just like, in the beginning, everyone was like, I don't know. Right. No one had mics. But I think because the vibe was there, we were able to pull through, and we did a lot of work to get that to sound good as a podcast. So if I did it again next time, we'd record better, but nobody knew. Like I was using like Be Live and it's just insane, silly stuff. But, I'm so grateful for it because it was the first time in my career that I did intellectual property, right? So I've always built things for other people, but that was my first foray into media, where I knew it was mine, right? It's literally Uncut Jewels is a part of me. And so I knew what that felt like. And the second thing that I'm really grateful for is you can't get a better time capsule for the most insane period of your life than going through this all on camera and like with your friends and your people and your families and just like, what? And so when you look back on it, you're like, yeah, I'm glad that we have it. It will be there beyond my time on this planet, I hope. And I'm thrilled for that. Like, I think that's a really fun, a byproduct benefit of the most difficult time I think we all went through. So yeah, trying to find the silver lining.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is super like powerful and exciting to have like content. Like I love my podcast as like a vehicle to look back. Like I have some from when I was in undergrad, some of my friends from college, and it's like, oh my God, like we're never gonna have those moments again. But just being able to listen and feel like I was there. Like I have voice memos of me with friends like rapping and freestyling and stuff like that. But I feel like the podcast is like a whole different level of like intimacy.
I love that.
And so I'm excited to start to be able to bring, like you say, this content on chain. I think that's really exciting to me. Like the idea of it then definitively, at least in theory, living beyond my lifetime, and not really being platform dependent as well is super exciting to me. I don't know if you saw Zora announced like they're launching their own L2.
I just saw that.
Soon. And I think that's like super fascinating because I think having ownership of networks in general has always been super, like it means a lot in any industry. And here Zora is trying to be like the network for creatives, like irrespective of platform. And it's like, oh wow, like I think that's like a huge move to be making. And I know they're doing so much
sense.
work.
I mean, that's the whole, it's like why I said like, email is still best in my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to connect phone number, email, now wallet. Why not? Like, I'm so interested and into this because I can tell you, I'm 53. I started my business 10 years ago. I was 43. For 25 years before that, I built other people's businesses. It is not easy to do. And to connect with the consumer for a long period of time is challenging. So you have to be diligent and consistent. And that's where I'm like, I'm so excited that these tools exist, that they didn't exist before. And it was like, nobody could go direct to consumer. You had to go through layers of things to get to that. I mean, music alone has changed since 2007 just by having this digital experience. So what I want to do is take back the power for the artists who gave away the music to Spotify and all these platforms to build these technologies that are billion-dollar businesses or million-dollar businesses. I want to take that power back and give it to them. And the only way to do that is to help them build their own networks, to help them have that direct conversation with their fans. It is not easy to do, but you have to be, railed and consistent. While it makes it so much easier, like it's just mind blowing. Like, wish it existed 35 years ago, but I mean, I guess it did. I don't even know when it started.
You
When
mean
did
like
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin? No, 25 years ago there was no Bitcoin.
There
I
was no
think
Bitcoin. Okay.
Bitcoin launched. I'm gonna like throw out 2013.
Okay.
But it could be like 2009, 2008, and I could be wrong. But I'm not gonna make any more guesses because I don't know.
I know. I have a number like 2007 in my head for whatever reason, but I know that's when the iPhone came out. So yeah, but technology is like, I love it. And I'm here for every single part of it. It does make it much easier when you want to continue connecting with people, to have these roads. And I think that the DSPs are slowly starting to realize that stronghold that they had on like keeping the artist and the fans separate isn't working. And I'm hoping that they're going to start, because they could sit on these places where they can let the conversation open up more. So I
Yeah.
still, every time I talk to somebody, at these places, I'm like, when are we going to get to, directly connect with the fan, or at least help speak with them like you can on Pandora, which is, putting that I'm not sure if anyone knows this, but if you don't know it, you can put a message to your fans on Pandora AMP, and it literally plays for them before a song, like as a pre-roll or something.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's an incredible tool if you're touring, to be like, hi guys, I'm coming to your area. They're the only ones that I admire doing that kind of stuff. I know Apple I love, but like for different reasons. So
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, I think SoundCloud recently released like a feature as well where you can reach out to artists and other people on the platform, which I think is exciting. But yeah, most of the time that's not the case. Like on Spotify, Apple Music, there is no way to directly communicate or engage as a fan, especially with the artist, which I think makes a lot of sense. Like you don't want to be bombarded with bajillion messages.
No, but I think you should be able to say, hey, I'm coming to town, or like I acknowledging your fans. If you have a super fan, like on the back end, you can see like, like if 1% of your fans are listening to you every day, okay, well, could you just do something to like connect with them? That's a good fan base. So I don't know. I just, for me, it's just like, at least have the option. Don't abuse it, but have the option. So I don't know. I don't think, I think artists are very aware that if you do too much, you can lose them. So it's just the right thing. You got to find your balance.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see like how that all pans out, how artists start to develop new kind of relationships with their fans, how this new like non-parasocial sort of dynamic where artists can build teams with their fans. This 1% can kind of play a more meaningful role as you see kind of in these communities in Web3 start to play out. I'm really excited to see like how artists build their careers using these new tools and these new like coordination dynamics.
Yeah.
And I know you have to.
I mean, honestly, I feel like we learned so much in the Web3 space that was just about continue to do. Like, remember the big net was, it's like, it's about the music. Just give them, what do they want more of? Not technology. They want music. Yeah. That's what they want. Just keep focused on your music, use these things to do a good job, but like make it about the music.
Yeah, and I think about the people and about the music, I think both those things are so important. It's like you're saying, like being able to acknowledge your fans, the role they play. And like, I heard someone say recently, like that there's an artist that sees himself as like fan dependent as opposed to independent. And I think that's a really good like way to phrase it. Because I feel like without these people who are listening to us and like valuing our work, then like our work really is nothing as a creative. So I'm excited to see artists take a more fan centric approach to thinking about themselves and building their platforms. And not only just fan centric, but I think people centric. Like I'm an individual, I need to take care of myself. But also like you're like I would be nothing without you and the role that you're playing in, like expanding my audience, helping other people discover me. So I'm very excited to see.
It was really, I mean, don't you feel like it was like a really, I don't know. I mean, you were I guess Tommy and Blink, and who else? Brody was there. Like a bunch of people who were there from the beginning. I know you saw that evolution of like, how hard is it to find a fan? How, when you finally talk to them, how excited they were to be a part of something else, and how almost every single one of them wanted to know other fans that were doing the same behavior. Like that's the richest community build. Like they're talking to each other. They want to be together, like that's the part where I'm like, when you're going through that, and how long did that take us? I think we started it, what was in August?
August.
Yeah, finished it in October. Yeah, so that that was a really big part of like, no one, there, when you look back on that time, it was so new and everyone's still trying to figure it out, and all of those people, every single one that we talk to, are still in that space doing something. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, DeFresh Maker, he's still like always on I mean, CY Lee, like, he has not stopped. He's not stopped. So these are the collectors out there who are just, fully committed to the space. And that's why I believe, like, I remember when, I think I've mentioned this before, in 1995, I went to work at a company and I was trying to get them on Blue Cross of California, which is a healthcare provider. I was trying to get them to do a website, right? And sitting in these meetings, and remind you, like, back at that time, it was like black and white screens. People didn't have like color, right? So they're like, wait, why do I need to have a brochure on the www.bluecrosscalifornia.com thing? And, for, licensors or whatever, you would send them like floppy disks and have them put things in their computer so that they could use these tools. The world, was so complicated, and trying to explain that to brands felt like I was making things more difficult, right? And I was saying, this is the future. This is gonna happen, and no one really cared. And I feel like we're doing the same thing today, and no one really cares, but they will once they see how valuable it can be to them. And that's just the way we have to go about this. It's a a down cycle right now. The perfect time to continue to do the work, continue to meet the people, continue to figure out who we are, and then pull forward. The fact that the AI music piece is so popular right now, is another area we should probably talk about at another time. But like, that gives me more hope to, you realize, like, we're in a hype right now, like, for media cycles, that's it's just, you have to get rid of it, stop the distractions, and just keep focused on what you do. And when we're doing research and when we're looking at the landscape, it's all important, all of it. There's, in my mind, no split between the hairs of, working in Web3, thinking about these environments that are like metaverse or multiverse oriented, and looking at how you would use AI in any way to improve your work process. Period. Now, ethically, there's different questions, but I think everyone knows that, we've got to figure out how to continue to make the progress without going back and imploding. So, but I, very excited, and I feel like I've been here for 35 years having the same conversation over and over again. But that's what you do when if it goes away, it's like, then it's a shame on everyone, because we couldn't figure out how to make it be valuable to people, right? But there was a point in time where Amazon was in the red for like 12 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And no one could figure out, why would anybody buy a book online, Well, here we are. Amazon runs our life, you know what I mean? So it's like, we just have to keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind, and then synthesize it through your needs. And once you do that, you get to make your own most informed decision how you're going to move forward. Whether you're an artist, a manager, a producer, an engineer, label, whatever it is, just don't ignore it.
No, I got that. And I appreciate you giving us your time today. I'm really excited personally to continue supporting creatives in this space. I think I heard David Hoffman say in an interview with Jacob from Zora last night, listening to their podcast, that like creatives come into these spaces with these new tools and they're like, well, what do I do with this? How do I use this? And I think that's really what's going to like help us get to a point where we have a clear vision of like how we're using this to bring value to people. I think it's about all of us speculating and ideating and, iterating too. And so I'm excited to keep seeing artists do that in the bear market. You say not like a down cycle. I think regardless, it's important to play. It's important to find out. And I think it's the only way to learn and really to be someone that can see how to make it work. So I think paying attention to people like yourself who are thinking about it, people who are otherwise involved at water and music and just actively in this space and asking the questions, I think is the best way to be tuned into where we're going and how it's going to look. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your futurist perspective. It means a lot to me, and I'm excited for my audience to know who you are, and to know that they can find you and see your work as a resource out in the world, and discover the artists you shared about today as well. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Well, I'm a big stan, so just keep at it. You're doing great.
Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks for all your
absolutely.
help on that Web3 project too. That was really fun. So thank you.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. And do you want to let people know where they can find you on socials or
Yep.
where they can? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn under Kristin Juel. I'm also Juel Concepts on LinkedIn as well. If you go to my website, juelconcepts.com, you can also find Uncut Juels. You can find the podcast there. Or you could go, like I said, to uncutjuels.xyz and find the podcast all there too. So obviously, we're on every single platform for the podcast, and YouTube is where you can actually go and see the crazy fun videos of what we did too. So and then my artists are all on that website too, and I would love it if you would join us there. It'd be fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll link all that in the show notes so people can see uncutjules.xyz. They can see your website. I'll link the podcast directly so people can find their way to that. So
Thank you. That's
yeah.
awesome. Thank you. And then don't forget about water and music and the research that we did. You should link to that too, because
Oh,
that
absolutely.
stuff's
Yeah.
amazing.
The Web3 fan journey will be linked as well. It was an incredible experience, and
It
it's
was.
definitely a worthwhile resource to be checking out if you're interested in the way that technology is impacting the music industry, from Web3 to AI to even more stuff that I've yet to learn about. The rabbit hole only goes deeper, and there's a lot of them when it comes to the internet. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And all the advising work that I do comes from all of that experience. So it's great. It's like been fun. I mean, studio space has really benefited from it too. So hopefully, just take a look at all this and consider the landscape for the future and join us in researching everything.
Booyah. Well, thank you for coming and listening to another episode of We Them Niggas. You can subscribe to this on whatever platform you're listening from. If you can rate us as well, I'd love that. I say us, but I know it's all my content right
It's
now.
you.
But the vision is that it will no longer be just me at some point in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, reach out to me if you're interested in being part of our Discord where we connect with artists, support artists. I'm excited to meet you and think of how I can be of service to you. So thank you so much for listening. And take care of yourself. And this is We Them Niggas. Booyah.
Nice job. Flowers.
Thank you. Thank you.